Disclaimer: this content is for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. I always thought I knew my husband. Every glance, every touch, every late night conversation, we had built a life together, one that felt safe, familiar. But that night, everything changed. It started like any other evening. I was home alone, waiting for him to return from another late shift at work. I had heard it 1,000 times before, never questioning, never doubting. But something inside me felt off. Maybe it was the way he had been acting distant lately, or the way his phone buzzed at odd hours and he would silence it without even looking. Curiosity got the best of me. I picked up his phone, just to check, just to put my mind at ease. But what I saw did the exact opposite. A single message: "I can't wait to see you again tonight. Same place?" My heart pounded in my chest. Who was this? A coworker? A friend? Or someone else? My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages. Photos, reservations, love notes, and then a name I had never seen before. A name he had never mentioned. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a secret life, one he had carefully hidden from me for years. I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. Who was this man I had married? Had I been living a lie this whole time? The air in the room felt heavy as my mind raced through every memory, every excuse he had ever made. I needed answers. So I did something I never thought I would. I decided to follow him that night, to see the truth with my own eyes. And what I found? It was far worse than I had ever imagined. Now, I want to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Would you have confronted him right away or waited to gather more proof? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know what you think happens next. Stay tuned for the full story because trust me, this is just the beginning. The moment I decided to follow him, my heart raced with a mix of fear and determination. I had no plan, just the overwhelming need to know the truth. I grabbed my coat, slipped on my shoes, and waited by the window, watching as his car pulled out of the driveway. He always had a routine. Dinner at home was rare these days. He would come back late, exhausted, always with some excuse: work meetings, last-minute deadlines, a friend who needed help. And I believed him every single time. But tonight, I wasn't going to believe blindly. I wasn't going to let my mind create excuses for him. I followed at a distance, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My stomach churned as I watched his car weave through the familiar streets, past his office, past any place he had ever mentioned before. Then he turned onto a quieter road, a part of town I had never been to. He pulled into a dimly lit driveway in front of a small, cozy-looking house, the kind of house where a family might live. My breath caught in my throat. Was this hers? A few seconds later, the front door opened and a woman stepped out. She wasn't just waiting for him. She was expecting him. Her face lit up with a smile as he walked toward her, arms opening like they had done this 100 times before. And then the unthinkable happened. A child, no older than 5, ran out the door and into his arms. My husband bent down, scooped him up effortlessly, and kissed his forehead. He looked happy, comfortable, like he belonged there, like this was his real home. My body froze. My mind screamed at me to move, to do something, but I couldn't. I just sat there, watching the man I thought I knew, living a life I was never supposed to see. How long had this been going on? Who was she? Was she just another affair, or was she something more? And that little boy? Was he his? A million questions ran through my mind, but none of them had answers. All I knew was that my husband had been lying to me for years, and now I had proof. But what was I supposed to do with it? Tell me, if you were in my place, what would you do? walk away, or confront the truth? Let me know in the comments and stay tuned because this is far from over. I sat in my car, frozen, watching a life unfold that I was never meant to see. My husband laughed as the little boy wrapped his arms around his neck, his voice filled with warmth and affection I hadn't heard from him in a long time. The woman, standing just a few steps away, smiled at them like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like this wasn't a secret. Like this was real. And maybe, for them, it was. My mind raced, trying to piece everything together. How long had this been happening? Was this woman just an affair, or was she something more, someone permanent? And the boy? My stomach twisted at the thought. Was he his son? Had my husband built an entirely separate life behind my back? I wanted to move, to get out of the car and scream at him, demand answers. But I couldn't. I didn't even know what I wanted to say. I was furious, heartbroken, and completely lost. If I confronted him now, what would he do? Would he lie? Would he walk away? Or worse, would he tell me that I was the mistake, that this life was his real one? A car passed behind me, its headlights briefly illuminating my face in the rearview mirror. I ducked instinctively, my heart pounding. What was I doing? Sitting here, spying on my own husband like some stranger? But wasn't that exactly what he had become? I needed proof, not just for myself, but because I knew that once I confronted him, he would twist the truth. He would tell me I was imagining things, overreacting, that it wasn't what it looked like. So I stayed. I watched as they went inside, the door closing behind them like it had 1,000 times before. My husband, the man I shared a home with, was spending the night in someone else's, and I was left sitting in the dark, wondering how much of my life had been a lie. I glanced at my phone, my fingers trembling as I hovered over his contact. Should I call him? Ask him where he was and see if he lied to me again? Or should I wait, gather more, and make sure that when I confronted him, there was no way out? A part of me wanted to storm in and make a scene. Another part of me, the part that had loved him for so long, wasn't ready to face the truth. What would you do if you were in my place? Would you walk inside, demand answers? Or would you wait, collect proof, and confront him when he least expected it? Let me know in the comments. And stay tuned, because this story is far from over. I barely remember driving home that night. My hands were shaking, my thoughts spinning so fast that the road blurred in front of me. My husband was living a double life. There was no other explanation. And the worst part? He had been so careful, so meticulous, that I never saw the cracks until now. I sat in the dark of our bedroom, staring at the framed photos on the nightstand. Our wedding day, a vacation by the beach, moments that felt so real back then, but now seemed like fragments of a story I didn't fully understand. Had he ever truly loved me? Or had I just been a piece of something bigger, something he had to keep hidden? The clock ticked past midnight. My phone sat beside me, silent. No messages, no calls. He hadn't even bothered to lie this time. It was almost as if he knew I had stopped asking questions. But I wasn't done, not yet. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If he could keep secrets, so could I. I needed to know everything, how long this had been going on, what he had told her about me, if she even knew I existed. I started small, checking our bank statements, his calendar, even his emails when he left his laptop open. The patterns were there, hidden in plain sight. Dinners he never mentioned, weekend work trips that suddenly made sense, withdrawals from an account I never knew he had. Every detail felt like another crack in the illusion I had been living in. But the real breakthrough came when I found the address, the woman's name, her social media profile. She wasn't just a stranger. She was someone close, someone I had met before. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. This wasn't just betrayal, this was calculated. I had all the proof I needed now. But what was I supposed to do with it? Confront him? Confront her? Expose him for the liar he was? I thought knowing the truth would make things clearer, but it only made everything more complicated. The anger, the pain, the humiliation, it was all building inside me like a storm ready to break. And I knew one thing for sure, this wasn't going to end quietly. What do you think I should do next? Confront him face to face? Expose him in front of everyone? Let me know in the comments and stay tuned, because the biggest twist is yet to come. I spent the whole day going over the evidence, every message, every transaction, every detail that proved the life my husband had been hiding. But no matter how much I prepared myself, nothing could erase the betrayal I felt. My hands trembled as I stared at my phone, debating whether to call him, to call her, or to just show up unannounced and force the truth out of them. But then, something happened that I wasn't expecting. My husband came home early. I had spent the past few nights alone, barely sleeping, waiting for him to come back with his usual excuses. But tonight, there he was, walking through the door like nothing had changed, like he hadn't been kissing another woman, tucking in another child. He set his keys down, loosened his tie, and looked at me with that same practiced expression, the one he had probably used 1,000 times before. "Hey," he said casually, as if he hadn't been gone for hours without an explanation. "How was your day?" I stared at him, searching his face for any sign of guilt, any flicker of truth. But there was nothing. He was too good at this, too comfortable with the lies. And that's when I knew. I couldn't let him see what I knew. Not yet. I forced a smile, pretending everything was normal. "It was fine," I lied. "How about yours?" His response was automatic. "Busy, long meetings, same as always." Same as always. The words stung more than I expected. How many times had he said that before, knowing it wasn't true? How many nights had I fallen asleep thinking he was exhausted from work, while he was somewhere else, with them? But just as I was about to excuse myself, my phone vibrated on the table. I glanced at the screen, and my heart nearly stopped. It was her, a message, a name I recognized instantly. I knew I had never spoken to her before, but she had reached out to me. I hesitated, my pulse pounding in my ears as I opened the message. "We need to talk, please. It's about him." The room felt like it was spinning. Why was she contacting me? Had she finally found out about me the way I had found out about her? Did she know I had been watching them? Or worse, was there something even bigger that I hadn't uncovered yet? I felt my husband's gaze on me, and I knew I had to act normal. I locked my phone and looked up at him, my mind racing. Did I respond? Did I meet her? What did she know that I didn't? And most importantly, was I ready to hear the truth? Tell me, if you were in my position, would you reply? Would you meet her? Let me know in the comments. And trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Stay tuned. I could barely focus the rest of the night. My husband was right there, moving through our home like everything was normal, completely unaware that his two lives were about to collide. The message from her burned in my mind. She wanted to talk, but why? Did she know about me? Did she know she wasn't the only one? Or was there something even worse I hadn't uncovered yet? I waited until he was asleep before I finally responded. "Where?" The reply came almost instantly. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. cafe on 5th. Please." The next day, my heart pounded as I walked into the cafe. I spotted her right away. She looked nervous, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup, her eyes scanning the room. And then she saw me. For a moment, We just stared at each other, both of us realizing that neither of us was the other woman. We had both been deceived. She took a shaky breath and whispered, "I thought I was his wife." The words hit me like a brick. She wasn't just an affair. She believed she was married to him, legally, officially. And suddenly, everything made sense. The secret bank account, the nights away, the carefully built lies. My husband hadn't just been cheating. He had been living two completely separate lives, married to both of us. Shock turned to fury. How long had he been doing this? How had he managed to keep it hidden? And what was he planning to do when the truth finally came out? And then she said something that made my blood run cold. "I think he's planning to disappear." My breath caught. What? I found plane tickets in his drawer. One way, no return. She looked at me, fear in her eyes. For him, and my son. Everything around me blurred. He was going to leave. He was going to walk away from both of us, take her child, and vanish without a trace. I had come here expecting to confront a cheating husband, but what I found was something much worse, and time was running out. What would you do if you discovered your husband was living a double life and planning to disappear? Let me know in the comments. And don't go anywhere, because this story isn't over yet. I sat frozen, my mind spinning with the weight of what I had just learned. My husband wasn't just a liar, he was a fraud, a man who had built two entire lives, two marriages, and now he was planning to disappear, leaving behind the damage he had caused without looking back. But I wasn't going to let that happen. She and I weren't rivals anymore. We were two women who had been deceived, used, and discarded. And together, we decided to stop him before he could vanish for good. That night, I went home and pretended everything was normal. I smiled, I kissed him goodnight. I even asked about his day. He had no idea that I already knew his secret. But as I lay next to him, I was fully awake, my heart pounding as I waited for the right moment. The next morning, as he was in the shower, I took his phone. I found the flight details, the confirmation emails, the name he had booked under. Everything was right there. Proof, evidence. And just as I was about to put it back, his phone buzzed. A message from her. "He's leaving today. Be ready." For a second, I felt a flicker of fear. Would he realize? Would he suspect me? But no. He stepped out of the bathroom, kissed me on the forehead, and said the same thing he always did. "I'll be home late tonight." He thought he was getting away with it, but he never made it to that plane. By the time he arrived at the airport, police were already waiting. Fraud, bigamy, identity theft. He hadn't just lied to us. He had built a trail of deception that went far beyond what we had imagined. And now he was finally caught. I watched from a distance as he was taken away, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Not broken, not lost, but free from the illusion I had been living in. The woman he had lied to, his other wife, stood beside me. We weren't friends, but we had survived something together, and maybe that was enough. In the end, he lost everything. And we walked away, stronger than before. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have forgiven him, or would you have exposed the truth like I did? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe, because sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.